Hi everyone, I'm Haley. I watched a video on this channel and there was this girl who was saying my parents loved my little sister more than me and complaining about how they were treating her sister better. I was really moved by that girl's story because I'm going through something similar. But in our house, it's only my mother who discriminates between her children. My dad would never do such a thing. The object of my mother's affection, the one she loves the most, is my brother, Aiden. Please don't get me wrong. I don't think it's my brother's fault. It's all about my mom. I don't know why, but she is very tolerant and loving towards Aiden. But when it comes to me, she bosses me around and criticizes me all the time. For my mom, my brother is always the priority. I, on the other hand, come after him. For example, what you see is my brother's old phone. This is what I'm using right now. I'm almost finishing high school, but my parents still haven't bought me a new phone. They would always give me one of their old ones. Last month, they bought Aiden a brand new phone as a present, and I got his old one instead. Even though he's 5 years younger than me, I'm the one getting hand-me-downs. It's supposed to happen the other way around, so I guess that makes me an exception. As I said at the beginning, my dad really loves both my brother and me. He doesn't treat us differently. But he works a lot and doesn't have too much free time. So my mother is the one who ends up shopping for all our gifts. Now I'm going to list all the gifts that my mom recently got for my brother and me, so you can better understand what I'm dealing with here. 1, a laptop for my brother. A karaoke mic for me. Yes, a karaoke mic. When I asked her, "Why did you get me this?" my mother said, "You're always singing to yourself in your room. That's why I thought you'd like it." 2, an awesome bike for Aiden. A book about Albert Einstein for me. My mother's explanation for this one is that I love reading. Yes, I do love reading, but don't you think it's unfair that my brother is getting a bike and I'm getting a book? And finally, the most expensive smartphone for my brother and a cinnamon-scented candle for me. I repeat, a smartphone for my brother, a candle for me. I was shocked when we opened our presents. My face was flushed with anger when I said, "Mom, what the heck?" My mother pretended she was really surprised and said angrily, "Haley, you love cinnamon. Your room will smell delicious." Oh, this is too much. You're not happy with anything. I can't say anything even though I'm being treated so unfairly all the time. Why? Because my mother thinks she can walk all over me just because she's my mother. She shuts me up every time without even listening to what I'm saying. She never lets me answer her. She's always right because she's the mother. She's smarter than everyone because she's the mother. Only she knows what's right because she's the mother. I can give you 1,000 examples of how she treats us differently. For example, she thinks Aiden is talented in every possible way and of course supports him all the time. My brother watches a couple of chess videos on YouTube, so my mom goes out and buys him a nice chess set. Or he sees his friend playing guitar and wants one too, so she buys him one right away. What happens every time is that Aiden forgets about them after a few days and moves on to something else. And still my mother keeps buying him more and more stuff. However, when it comes to me, she does the complete opposite. Ever since I was little, I loved drawing. I think I'm pretty good at it too. For a while, I was interested in oil painting. I was watching oil painting tutorials on YouTube all day long, one after the other. Even though I kept asking my mother to get me art supplies, she never did. So I saved up my allowance and ordered them online. When the materials arrived, I immediately started experimenting on the canvas. When my mother came into my room, she saw the tubes of oil paint, the brushes, and the canvas. She laughed and said, "Don't you think all this is a little too much for someone who can only draw stick figures?" Okay, I realize I may not be Frida Kahlo, but don't you agree that it's simply wrong for a mother to say such things to her daughter? She's been treating me like this for so long that I was wondering if all mothers are like this, and I'm just exaggerating. But my friends have pretty normal relationships with their mothers. They get along really well. Some of them are even friends with their mothers. My mother, on the other hand, criticizes me all the time. My hobbies, my clothes, the shows I watch, the way I eat. She always criticizes everything I do, and I mean everything. She's watching me all the time. It's as if she's going out of her way to find something wrong with me. You know what the worst part is? I think the real reason why my mother behaves this way is gender discrimination. That means she doesn't love my brother more because he's younger, but because he's a boy. I can give you many examples of this too. For example, even though I really want to go to college, my parents are not planning to send me to one. But even though my brother is only 12, we already know what he's going to study in college: chemical engineering. But do you know why? Because my dad owns a company that produces plastic kitchenware. My mother wants Aiden to study chemical engineering so that he can manage the business in the future. So you see, my mother is grooming my brother to take over the family business down the line. And she doesn't think I could do it. It's easy to see why. Because my mother thinks a factory can only be run by a man, and that is my brother, Aiden. I know very well that the real reason is gender discrimination, but my mother doesn't accept it. Once when we were talking about college, she said, "Honey, unfortunately, I'm not sure you would do well in college." I asked, "Mom, why do you think that?" As if she didn't want to upset me, she said, "You know why." "What do you mean?" I insisted, and she replied, "Did you forget about the test?" I was so shocked when I heard that. When I was 13 and Aiden was 8, my aunt, who's a psychologist, gave us an IQ test. It was this simple test made for kids. It wasn't something to be taken seriously, in my opinion. The test results said my IQ was 105 and my brother's 115. According to my aunt, getting 90 to 110 points indicates average intelligence, whereas 110 to 120 points indicates above average intelligence. Based on this simple test, my mother concluded that I wouldn't do well in college. According to her, only my brother could go to college because he has above normal intelligence. That means that if for some reason I'd gotten anything less than 90, my mother would have thought I was stupid. I got really mad at my mother after what she said about the IQ test. And unfortunately, I did something I would later regret, something that was out of character for me. This is the first time I'm admitting this. I went to the bathroom and thought about my mother saying, "You won't be able to go to college because you're not as smart as your brother." It really hurt me that she could think this way. I started crying. As I was looking in the mirror, I suddenly noticed my mother's toothbrush. So I grabbed it and dipped it into the toilet bowl. I thought I was punishing my mother. It was something I never should have done, and I would undo it now if I could. My mother probably brushed her teeth with that toothbrush that night. After I went to bed, I deeply regretted what I'd done. I got up, went to the bathroom, and washed her toothbrush for a long time. Unlike my mother, my grandmother loves Aiden and me equally. For our birthdays, she buys us the same presents. When she gives us money, she lets us know that we're both receiving the same amount. I wish my mother were more like her own mother. This one time, my grandmother, my mother, and I went shopping. We were supposed to get dresses for my cousin's wedding. We went into a store to look for a dress for me. I picked 3 dresses to try on. After putting on each dress, I went out to show them to my mother and grandmother to see what they thought. While my grandmother was making comments, my mother did not say a word. When I put on the last dress, I said, "Mom, you didn't say anything." Do you know what she told me? "Haley, unfortunately, no dress ever looks good on you. But don't be upset, it's not your fault. You got your dad's genes when it comes to your looks. No one on your father's side looks good no matter what they're wearing. Your brother, on the other hand, got his genes from me. He looks so good in everything, so it's easy to shop for him. I think we should accept this as a fact and not spend any more time shopping for you." Yes, that's exactly what my mother said. Naturally, both my grandmother and I were shocked. Trying to hide her anger, my grandmother said, "Why are you being so mean? Haley is a very pretty young girl. She looks good in whatever she's wearing. There must be something wrong with your eyes." Then she turned to me and said, "My dear Haley, all 3 dresses looked so good on you. We're getting them all. I'm going to the register to pay. You can decide later which one to wear to the wedding." Because I'd gotten used to my mother's behavior, I didn't get too upset that day, but my grandmother was furious with her. Friends, it feels really good to tell you all about this. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's definitely not fair for parents to favor one kid over another. I'm sure some of you are dealing with a similar situation. If you write about your experience, you'll let it out and feel much better. I'll be waiting for your comments. See you!
Hello, I'm Agnes. My life story is very interesting because I have something very few other people have. When I cry, I don't have tears coming out of my eyes. I know it sounds unbelievable, but when I cry, tiny diamonds fall out of my eyes. Yes, I said diamonds. This is the second part of my story. I'll give you a quick summary. But if you haven't seen the first part, you can click this link to watch it. When I was little, I thought that everyone cried just like me. But my mom made sure that nobody ever saw me cry, not even my dad. She was afraid that if bad guys found out that I was crying diamonds, they would kidnap me and hold me hostage for the rest of my life. She was right to think that way. One day, my mom made me promise that I'd keep my condition a secret until I died. 4 years later, she was involved in a car accident and passed away. My dad got married again soon after. My stepmother has a daughter, and I didn't like either of them from the moment I saw them. Obviously, I didn't want them to find out about my secret, but unfortunately, I wasn't careful, and they learned the truth. At first, they didn't believe me. They even laughed at me. But when I started crying in front of them, they saw that it was true. It was a huge surprise for everyone to find out that I had this incredible condition. It was my dad who spoke first. Agnes, this is unbelievable and very dangerous too. If people knew about this, really bad things could happen to you. I understand now why your mother kept this, even from me. Then he turned to my stepmother and her daughter. From now on, Agnes's secret is our secret too. To protect her, we can't tell anyone about it. I want you to promise that you won't. They both nodded and said, We promise. Then my stepmother grabbed the bag of diamonds from my dad, which of course wasn't surprising. But there's no harm in selling these. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone where they came from. Agnes, from now on, you'll give me the diamonds that come out of your eyes, and I'll sell them for our family. The next day, my stepmother and her daughter came home with a ton of shopping bags. Looking at the bags, I could tell that they went to all the most expensive stores. Apparently, when my stepmother said our family, she meant only herself and her own daughter. My stepmother's daughter, Nancy, came to my room that evening. She was very excited, saying, My mom says it would be so wonderful to move into a big, beautiful house, and we can do it thanks to you. It wouldn't hurt you to cry a little. What do you say? It was useless to argue. I said, Okay, I'll collect and give you the diamonds if I cry, just to get rid of her. She left my room ecstatic. Next morning, when I came to get breakfast, I saw my stepmother and her daughter waiting for me impatiently. My stepmother asked, Did you cry? Where are the diamonds? I was so angry. Before I could say anything, Dad said, Honey, you shouldn't say things like that. Agnes should never feel like she's under pressure, which shut my stepmother up. This subject didn't come up again for a while. I was surprised that they gave up so quickly. Later, I found out it was because they still had money. They were going shopping almost every day, but after a while, they stopped. That's when I figured the money had run out. One day, I was hanging out in my room after school. Nancy came in and said, Mom is calling you. She made popcorn. She says, Let's watch a movie together. I was surprised because this was very unusual. I thought to myself, where did this come from? When I came to the living room, my stepmother was looking at me with a fake smile on her face. Agnes, this movie has very good reviews. Let's watch it together, she said. So we started watching this Will Smith movie. First, the main character lost his job. Then his wife left him. He was left with his 6-year-old son. As if that weren't enough, the landlord kicked them out. They had to start living on the streets. When I saw my stepmother and Nancy crying their hearts out, I knew what they were trying to do. They wanted to make me cry during this sentimental movie and then collect the diamonds. But there was one thing they didn't know. I never get emotional during movies. I don't get scared when I watch horror movies, and I don't cry during tearjerkers. My stepmother and her daughter cried throughout the whole movie. At the same time, they kept checking to see if I was crying too. When the movie was over, they were really upset because they didn't get those diamonds they were dreaming about. Over the next few days, my stepmother did everything she could to make me cry. Thankfully, because she was scared of my dad, they were all harmless tricks. But one of them made me really mad. When I came home after school, I went straight to my room, like I always do. When I entered my room, I was so shocked by what I saw. The curtains were closed. There were lit candles standing around. The weirdest part was that there were a bunch of photos of my mom taped to the wall. In some of them, my mom was by herself, and in others, it was both of us. This, of course, was my stepmother's latest trick. I ran over to her. "Can you explain to me what is happening in my room?" I screamed. She faked surprise, saying, "I found out that your mom's birthday is coming up. I wanted to surprise you. Didn't you like it?" I said, "I didn't because I know why you did it. I won't cry just because you want me to. after which she dropped all pretense. Look, Agnes, you're the goose that lays the golden egg. That's why I won't hurt you. But if you want to live in this house, you'll have to come up with the goods, or I won't be responsible for what's going to happen to you. She was clearly threatening me. I got back to my room fuming. I had to do something right away. When my dad came home, I went to speak with him. Before I could open my mouth, he said, "Your mom called me and told me about what happened between you. She made a surprise for you with the best of intentions. Your reaction is wrong. You've become too paranoid." I said, "Dad, first of all, that woman is not my mother, and how can you even think that her intentions are good? All she is trying to do is to make me cry and get the diamonds." My dad got really upset. "Even if you don't accept it, she's your mother now. If you think she wants the diamonds, then give them to her. Why are you being so stubborn?" he screamed. When he said that to me, I knew my stepmother got to him. From then on, it was dangerous for me to stay at home because of the things my mom was worried about could happen to me. Except my mom was afraid of the mafia, but it looked like it would be my own stepmother who would hurt me. I thought for a long time. I couldn't go to the police or the social services because then my secret would be out. That could cause a whole lot of other problems. I had enough diamonds hidden in the basement to allow me to support myself for years. But I couldn't leave home because I wasn't an adult yet. I didn't have any relatives that I could safely stay with. Even though I was so angry with my stepmother, I had no choice but to give her what she wanted. At night, when everyone else was sleeping, I went down to the basement and got a small bag of diamonds. In the morning, I took out a few and went to the kitchen. My stepmother and her daughter were having breakfast. I showed them the diamonds in my hand. "Finally!" my stepmother screamed. She took the diamonds. But she was clearly not satisfied, saying, "These are way too few. We need a lot more than just these." Of course, I wasn't going to give her what she wanted. I was going to turn 18 in only 7 months. After that, I was determined to take my diamonds and leave home. Until that day came, I was going to stall my stepmother by giving her a few diamonds from time to time. Since the diamonds in the basement were my future, I had to hide them somewhere outside the house, somewhere safer. So do you know where I hid them? At my mom's grave. I bought a nice flower planter. I put the bag with the diamonds at the bottom. I filled it up with soil and then planted the flowers on top. I went to the cemetery and put the planter in front of my mom's tombstone. I couldn't think of a safer spot than that. Who would steal a flower pot from a grave? I was so relieved because the diamonds were safe with my mom. I left one bag inside the cupboard in the basement. I was taking a couple of diamonds a few times a month and giving them to my stepmother. Even though she wanted more, she couldn't say anything. Because thanks to me, she'd bought a new car. She was wearing only designer clothes, and she got a ton of jewelry. The day before my 18th birthday, my stepmother and her daughter came to my room. I was about to finally become free, but of course, they didn't know that. My stepmother looked agitated. "Agnes, why aren't we moving into a better house? Why don't we have maids and cooks?" she asked. "Because you don't have enough money to afford all that," I replied. She waved her finger at me. "We actually do have money. All you need to do is cry, but you're not doing it on purpose. You're giving us crumbs just like you would to a beggar," she said. "Do you want me to cry just so that I can give you diamonds?" I asked her. And she said, "Yes, Agnes, I want you to cry. If you don't cry on your own, I will make you cry. I'm done waiting. I'm giving you until tomorrow. If you don't cooperate, you're going to be in a lot of trouble." And she left. Nancy was still in the room. "Agnes, you'd better take my mom seriously. She's capable of doing things you can't even imagine," she said and left, slamming the door behind her. I thought, my dear stepmother gave me until tomorrow, but she has no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, and burst out laughing. Never in my life have I slept more peacefully than I did that night. You're wondering what happened in the house the next day, right? Unfortunately, I don't know, because I didn't stick around to find out. When I woke up in the morning, I was an 18-year-old adult. I could do whatever I wanted, and I did. I left home without saying a word to anyone. Right now, I'm in a small town on the other side of the country. I'm not using my real name. No one in this town knows who I am. As you might guess, I'm living on the money from the diamonds that I hid at my mom's grave. I don't need a lot of money anyway, but when I do, I can just cry a little. And I found a very easy way to do it. Because I'd never cooked before, I'd never chopped onions either. One day, I was making dinner, and I chopped onions for the first time. Suddenly, diamonds started pouring out of my eyes. I realized that I could cry very easily thanks to onions. I'm so happy my stepmother couldn't think of this. Thank you for listening to my story. Please don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it.